recording this seminar.
And you're good.
Very good. Okay, thank you AIA New Jersey members for participating in tonight's webinar. This is our 9th webinar in the Equity Guide series from AIA National. Tonight's program is on measuring progress. Tonight's course will earn each of the participants that stay on the webinar and complete the survey 2 AIA learning units, and it is registered with AIA National. The Equity Guide to Measuring Progress is a live interactive course. The content that we're going to be covering comes from the National Equity Guides to the Architectural Profession, which is 9 chapters long plus an introductory chapter. This is the final chapter from National, although AIA New Jersey will be having some additional equity content later in the year and moving into next year. Tonight's program is on measuring progress. So there is going to be content that relates to all of the other webinars that we've offered and live lectures that we had in 2019. And then we talk about how to determine the progress that we're making with our move towards equity. And the guest speakers will be providing experiences from their firms and how your firm can adopt those same practices to benefit your bottom line. The learning objectives tonight: participants will learn how to gather data on their current level of equity. Participants will learn how to identify areas where they need to focus more attention and determination on improving equity. Participants will learn how to set goals, analyze data, design strategies, and measure change. And participants will learn how metrics can inform the development of initiatives and establish baselines. And subsequent regular measurement can help track the impact of those initiatives over time to allow progress to be acknowledged. Our first
Stacey, may I interrupt you just for a second?
Sure. Yes.
Questions, are you going to hold them to the end of each speaker and people can put those in the Q&A?
Yes, that would be best, please. So
Okay.
anyone who has a question, type it into the Q&A. We're not going to be opening up anybody's microphones tonight, but we'll be happy to involve your questions by answering the questions that you type in.
There we go. Needed to do that.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Fareh Garba, AIA, is an architect and associate with Gensler's Morristown office. She is here tonight as a representative for Gensler, who has been known for being on the cutting edge of integrating equity and prioritizing equity in their firm. And I was very excited to know that Fareh would be available to speak with us tonight and share the perspectives of what Gensler is doing with regards to equity. Thank you for joining us, Fareh.
Thank you.
We have Merilee Meacock with us. Merilee is a partner with KSS, also here in New Jersey. Merilee personally is very devoted to all types of ways to make the architectural experience more human and to integrate interdisciplinary actions to create a very vibrant experience in her designs. And I'm also so excited that she is able to be here with us tonight and share her perspectives as well as what KSS is doing in regards to equity. And I am the chairperson for the AIA New Jersey Equity Committee. We have been in place only for 2 years, so we evolved out of the Women in Architecture Committee and our Diversity Committee, and combine a lot of the content that we were doing in silos to really talk about the fact that equity is not an isolated issue, but it relates to something that every firm needs to be aware of. And it's a change that having an awareness on how you're doing with your equity movement really makes a difference. So it's something that I personally feel very strongly about. I am a sole practitioner, so I don't necessarily employ the things that I teach in my own practice because I'm here by myself, but it goes way beyond that. It's about thinking about the other people in the profession, thinking about how you interact with your clients. So my involvement in the equity committee comes from my past experience as well as my vision for the future. The equity guides are, as I mentioned, a 10-part document put together by National. The link for the guides will be provided at the end of the program, but they are a resource for every firm that breaks down different segments of business and helps the firms and the individuals understand what issues there are related to equity that they should be aware of. The goal of the AIA New Jersey Equity Committee is to understand that this is an uncomfortable topic for some people, but every single one of us have to be aware that equity talks about the way other people are feeling about how you are interacting with them. So you may think that you're acting in an equitable way, treating everyone equally, or not acknowledging differences that people may exhibit. But at the root of equity, it's about what the other person is feeling. So it doesn't really matter that much if you feel like you're doing the right thing. If other people are still feeling uncomfortable about the way things are being handled, whether it's with regards to communication or if it's regards to an actual policy or procedure. Like sometimes it's something on paper, sometimes it's something that people are feeling. But it's something that each individual firm and the profession need to be aware of, that these problems do exist and we need to acknowledge them, because having a more equitable profession affects all of us and benefits everyone right down to the bottom line. Tonight's guide to measuring progress. So through the other 8 webinars that we've had, or seminars that we've had, we've talked about a variety of different business practice that firms can choose to analyze and put in place new strategy towards achieving equity. But once we have those things in place, we have to understand, have we made any difference by putting these things in place? So what we're going to talk about tonight is measuring the progress that firms or individuals have made towards achieving a greater level of equity. At this time, I'm going to ask Merilee to screen share. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Fareh, I'm going to ask to see Gensler's slide deck first. If you could please share with us your screen and we can talk about Gensler's approach to measuring progress towards equity.
Sure. Let me do that.
I'm going to mute myself too.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Fareh, I am.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Stacey, for that wonderful introduction. I wanted to start by reintroducing myself. My name is Fareh Garba. I am an architect in Gensler Morristown's office. I've been in practice in New York and New Jersey area and education for almost 20 years. At Gensler Morristown, I'm currently the chair of our diversity committee. I also sit on several committees towards diversity and inclusion, one of which is our Justice, Equity, Design Dialogue Speaker Series that has been curating a variety of speakers to speak to the Northeast offices, and it's open to the entire firm. And I'm also, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, I'm also a recipient of 2 out of 15 research grants awarded by our inaugural grant program under the Black Lives in Design research grant from our new wing created within our research, Gensler Research Institute, called the Center for Research and Equity and the Built Environment. So I'm very happy to have the opportunity to share some of what we're doing and participate in this talk. the first thing I'd like to share with you is our 5-point action plan. The firm has committed itself to sharing and executing these strategies to fight racism in various ways throughout our offices and regions. The first one, as you can see, is targeted at increasing racial diversity within our office. And that's more looking at recruiting and hiring more Black professionals, supporting the Black professionals that work within Gensler currently to not only achieve but exceed their fullest potential. The second one is creating education opportunities for Black students. As we know, in order to have Black professionals within our profession, we have to address the pipeline. And so this one is focused on educational opportunities for students interested in going into architecture. And it's essentially just focusing on expanding our scholarship program and increasing our participation in mentoring programs that we currently participate in middle schools and high schools in our communities. The third is pursuing equitable design solutions in our cities and communities. This is a large topic and something that we do every day. It touches everyone's work and really every architect and client that we work with. So this is really looking at every scale within our community, whatever scale of project it is, that we think or we look at that project through the lens of equitable design solutions and implement them in our designs. The fourth, creating job opportunities in the A&D industry for Black professionals. Without having to state the statistics, I think we're all familiar with the challenges for getting and recruiting, I would say, and even maintaining Black professionals in A&D. And sometimes it has to do with, like I said, the pipeline, but also the lack of awareness or mentorship, driving them to this profession. And so we will aim to partner with NOMA, which is the National Organization of Minority Architects, which we are an active partner with them, continue that, and also continue to increase our participation in the ACE mentoring program, which I had the opportunity to participate in last year, and it really is quite tremendous program. And then the last is partner with our clients on diversity and inclusion. And this is really just, looking to them and programs that they may have already and finding ways to use our network to amplify their efforts towards greater equity. Okay. So the next slide is, this is an ongoing, actually, charrette that we've been participating in for quite a few months. The Global Design Charrette 2.0 focuses specifically on design for racial equality and inclusiveness in our communities and cities. We started this Global Design Charrette with a listening and learning series. It's broken down into 3 categories: our people, our clients, and our community. Again, focusing on 3 different categories at different scales, and how do we address equity amongst ourselves, with our clients, and in our communities through our design, through our mentorship, volunteering, stewardship in our communities. And so we have had, I can't count, but we've had several very compelling talks from within Gensler. Some of our clients came in and talked intimately with the firm We had great participation from firm-wide on this. And now we're in the second phase of that, design charrette, and this is for ideas. We've named this bridges. And this call for ideas of any scale, any format even, but the idea is that we bring forth ideas that allow us to think about the relationship between design, what we do, and equity and the human experience. And so we will hopefully have in a few days a series of submissions and a publication that exhibits the thoughts and ideas that have come out from the many months we spent listening to our speakers. The next initiative, this is very exciting. So I spoke about this a bit earlier. The Gensler Research Institute has added to its pillars a sixth, and this is the Center for Research on Equity and the Built Environment. This adds to focuses on cities, workplace, resilience, health and wellness, and experience. And now this equity and the built environment, this new grant program called Black Lives in Design, focused on how do we, on issues facing the Black community, and how do we use design as a catalyst for change. We had 47 submissions to the RFP and 15 grants awarded. I'm on 2 of those projects, a bunch and a variety of topics, including Black voices, creativity, the Black experience, design justice, unconscious bias, climate justice, etc. So this is very exciting for us, and it will be a 6-month cycle this time, but this will continue. This is the first, but we will continue to award grants under this new pillar of the Research Institute. So that's also very exciting. And then I also mentioned being on, serving on the committee for Justice, Equity, and Design Dialogues. This is a firm-wide, well, yes, a firm-wide speaker series, again, that is focused on celebrating Black culture and its importance in history, and trying to spark a movement within Gensler to participate in the global fight to abolish structural racism. Our first speaker was distinguished university professor of African American Studies at Princeton University, Dr. Eddie Glaude Jr. He spoke to us for just about 40 minutes, quite captivating discussion. And then we had a Q&A with him, followed by a breakout session within our offices to further kind of unpack a lot of what he discussed. The participation was high, and we received a lot of requests to review and you know, record and review the recording of this talk. So we're excited to continue this series. We will have one probably every few months. The next is scheduled for December, and we will continue the speaker series further into the future. So this is a quick snapshot of some of the current initiatives that we are undertaking, and I'll hand the screen back over to Stacey.
Thank you so much, Fareh.
Thank you.
Personally, coming from, I'm just a one-man firm, but in my previous work experiences, I worked for varied levels of firm sizes, and that is extremely impressive to me to see the variety of opportunity that Gensler is exercising to strive to reach these goals. So I really applaud the actions of your firm, and I am excited further in the presentation to learn how you and Morristown are measuring the progress of some of those things. Next, I invite Merilee to please share your screen and tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the practices that KSS has in place.
Sure thing. Stacey, you're a one-woman firm, not a one-man firm, right?
Yes.
I always have to think about that when I say man months. How many man months is this project going to take? How many woman months is this going to take? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about the past, the present, and the future of our firm. My name is Merilee Meacock. I'm a partner with KSS Architects. The firm is almost 40 years old. We have 7 new partners. We actually just named a new partner, Maeva Donnan, last week, actually. We are almost 80 people. We have 3 offices in New York, Philadelphia, and Princeton. Our markets hit on learning, commerce, and community. And we believe that we can bring meaningful and lasting change to our clients, our society, and our world. I am personally an architect. I'm also a professional planner, a lead AP, and I chair my local zoning board here in Cranberry, New Jersey. So I learn a lot about the land use process through that opportunity. And I've been with KSS for 30 years. Just celebrated my anniversary in August. When I was looking for a job, I actually started at KSS right out of college. And Princeton was a hotbed of architecture firms. There were about 40 firms in the area. And I was targeting firms along the East Coast that were award-winning and near universities. And at the time, KSS had both opportunities. They were near Princeton and they were award-winning. There were only 8 people with the firm at the time, and now we're 80, 30 years later. But what really struck me about the firm was when I arrived for my interview, one of the partners had their child in the office and the other partner had their dog in the office. And I said, I really like this. This is like a really good environment that I want to be part of. But at the same time, they were doing very sophisticated work. Our firm actually grew out of GBQC. They're a Philadelphia firm that is no longer in existence. I think they've been, I don't know I feel like there are firms out there that are the legacy of GBQC. But in any event, they were a 1979 AIA national award-winning firm, and Princeton was the satellite office of that firm. And our partners left there to start our firm. So over the 30-year period, I have, grown in my career. I've had 3 children. I ended up divorcing at one point, and so I've been a single mom for 16 years. And I've always stayed at KSS because of the culture. And it's been really the culture of our firm is life comes first. And we offer a lot of flexibility in hours, a very supportive environment. Egos don't really last in our firm. It's about supporting each other, not, getting ahead of each other. And there are a lot of opportunities for women in the firm. From the time I had even a year of experience, I was, getting involved with running projects and actually on construction sites with contractors. And I really valued that experience. Many of my clients are women because I'm in the education and community markets. And so a lot of my clients I consider peers and friends, and I've enjoyed that experience. Other reasons why I stayed, the office was local to daycares, doctors, dentists, those types of things. I had to take my kids all over the place in order for their care. Now they're in high school and college, so they're kind of beyond that now. But at the time, I didn't want to have to travel into New York. And the big firms in Princeton were CUH2A and Hillier. And a lot of their work was actually in the Middle East and China. And while it would have been wonderful to work on those opportunities, I knew that I wouldn't be able to travel with a young family. So I really just, stayed where I was and made, the best that I could out of being more regional and, working on sophisticated work at the same time. Through the years, I have seen forms of discrimination on job sites. Most of the time I got along great with the contractors, but once in a while I did get into a little bit of an altercation with the subcontractor, and I felt a little bit violated, let's just say. Many clients thought I was there to take notes, which that's always a frustrating feeling. But then when they realized that I actually knew what I was talking about, they offered respect. and attending certain conferences, like the multifamily housing conferences, they're all basically men in pinstripe suits, and I really felt kind of out of place at some of the conferences along the way. And I'm sure, you know, other women on the call, you know, have probably been in some of these same situations. The last area of discrimination at the time was, I remember 5 years into my career, I was running several projects, and a male colleague asked me to trade salary notes. And I thought to myself, well, you know, I'm running 3 projects, he's running none. I'm sure I'm making more money than him. And then when we traded salary notes, I realized that he was making more than I was. And I was really upset. And so I went in and said, hey, this isn't right. You know, I have a lot more responsibility. And I think, you know, at that point, I was rewarded with a better salary, let's just say. So presently, I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are presently, and this slideshow deals with the present. We are currently, we're a WBE. More than half of the firm is owned by women, with Pam Rue and I being majority partners. More than half of our employees, including our professional staff, are also women. But we didn't really plan it that way. It's more of a meritocracy where, you know, Pam and I were able to thrive in the environment, in the sort of family-friendly environment through the years. We both had 3 children, but we were, you know, very driven, and we wanted to succeed. So we kind of made it through, and we're in the process of, you know, trying to transfer to other people and allow them to grow through the ranks as well. About 15 years ago, I took on trying to find a new market for the firm to allow us to be a little bit healthier in terms of different types of markets. And I was actually looking at the SEC K-12 work that was happening in the early 2000s. And I wasn't successful in finding that market, but I was successful along the way. I did happen upon a charter school market dealt with revitalizing American education in a lot of the urban areas of the country, let's just say. And so that market actually really took off for us, and we've been able to make great impact in neighborhoods in New York, in Newark, Camden, and Philadelphia. With our charter school projects, we've had over 100 projects in the last 15 years in this market. And we've really enjoyed this work, and I'll show you some of the work. It's very, you know, these clients are very mission-based, trying to reinvent education for the underserved populations. You know, it's been a real joy to work on this project type. This one actually just won an AIA New Jersey award. It's been really fun. A lot of these are, some of them are renovations, some of them are ground up new builds. This one's in Camden. This one's actually a higher ed project, but again, under the same sort of social impact narrative. This one is actually for Rutgers. They were looking to engage a broader audience in Newark. And so they went through a process of creative placemaking and engaging the art community in Newark toward building a new community art center that was both community and the Rutgers students. And it was in the new Haynes building, which is in right on Broad Street in Newark. And another shot of that as well. The Grammy Museum in Newark also doing some similar narrative, where using different techniques to engage a broader audience, understanding that people come, you know, from lots of backgrounds, but they can be connected and welcomed through making things, whether it's printing, you know, back in this shot, or through making music. These are things that connect us as humans, regardless of our socioeconomic class, our race, even our neurodiversity. That's another area that we've been spending some time thinking about. And we've been working with a lot of clients on schools and adult facilities and centers for adults and children with autism, and understanding that many of these individuals are nonverbal, and but they still have, you know, they still need to have purpose, and they still need to enjoy good design. And so we've been really looking at opportunities for multisensory design, dealing with anxiety. Anxiety is actually something that impacts, again, all humans, especially in our world today with computers, and we're tied to our phones and that type of thing. And so, and now with COVID, even worse. And so it's that opportunity to allow people to engage with each other in a physical way. And architecture can do that through, we use, a lot of strategies, multisensory design, biophilic design, in order to engage more neurodiverse population as well. We've been involved with some amazing organizations. The Community Design Collaborative in Philadelphia, we do at least one community design collaborative project a year. And these are pro bono projects where we collaborate with a mission-based client, and to kickstart a project, we help them to design the project and get it going, understand how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take to build. And so we do those. We do one of those every year. We have offered $50,000 in scholarships at NJIT for an architecture student over the years. We've been involved with CREW, both in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania, and at the national level. CREW is Commercial Real Estate Women, and it's been a great organization. And then also ACE, and this picture actually shows our ACE program, and Fareh mentioned that as well. It is a great program. It stands for Architecture, Construction, and Engineering, and they really focus on the metropolitan areas of the country. They're a national organization. They're a mentoring program for high school students. We've been involved with ACE for about 15 years. In central New Jersey, they began at the Trenton High School, and then they moved to Heightstown. And then in Philadelphia, we've been involved. And this picture is actually a recent initiative that we had. It was sponsored by CREW, but it was a collaboration between ACE and Girls Inc. And the narrative of this collaboration, there were about 15 women that we hosted on a weekly basis at our office. We talked about the qualities of a leader, women in power, and assertive communication. And it was a lot of fun. We did a lot of projects with this group, and we really enjoyed our time getting to know them. This is another picture of the girls working in our conference room. And then we're also involved with Penn Women in Design. This is a networking group. They take studio tours around Philadelphia of all the architecture firms, and we host them every year, and we host seminars with them and collaborate with them as well. And that's been fun. And then a couple of pictures of our some of our tours. This is actually our Pennovation project at for Penn, but all of these individuals are people in the firm. And then also this is our Bancroft project. Again, another tour. We take a lot of field trips to see our built work. And then this is actually the Bach Bar on the roof of the Bach building in Philadelphia. We were able to build this site installation, and it was a great collector of community. So now I want to talk a little bit about the future. This culture that we have has really attracted like-minded individuals, and currently, well, I'm still in the current actually. We have a weekly leadership meeting where we talk about, we are divided in the firm into creative teams. We have 4 creative teams for the 80 people in the firm, and each creative team is not connected to a particular partner or a particular typology. It's actually a mix. We felt that that was really interesting. So people are working on all scales of projects and all market types, working with all different partners as well. And so it's been a lot of fun to cross-collaborate and cross-pollinate throughout the firm. But every week we meet with the leaders of these teams, and we talk about supporting the teams, especially through COVID. It's been crucial to understand how people are doing. Are they healthy? Are they mentally okay? Do they need support? Do they need childcare? What kind of support do they need? How can we help them? And so it's been great to learn about everyone in the firm and understand. We've even hired, probably hired almost 9 people through COVID, and getting to know them on screen through these leadership meetings and the other venues that we have in the firm has been great. We offer, great benefits, part-time, leave of absence, PTO, and all of this is in an effort to support families There are some individuals in the firm who do have families and are having to school their children during the day. And we are keeping their salaries at full level, even though they're not working full time at this point. It's been, a really great thing. We have a lot of other friend groups. We have a yoga club, a soup club. We have practice groups in different practice areas of the firm. And a lot of friendships and romances as well. So it's been, we're a very tight-knit family, if you can be that at age people. In terms of compensation and advancement, we are leveling the firm around responsibilities and also using the AIA guidelines. I love the AIA, their resources are amazing. Using their guidelines in terms of responsibilities has been really key to the firm. Hold on, I'm gonna let him out. And last, I'll talk about the future real quickly. We've just built a new vision statement, a design community shaped by relentless creativity. And we are working currently on a 5-year strategic plan where we're working on more ethnic diversity and cross-disciplinary engagement. We want to hear from more voices. We think that'll make our firm more creative. And those voices are both in the firm and out of the firm. We hope that it will bring stronger design ideas. We're targeting a 100-person firm in new regions. We have 2 or 3 initiatives that we're working on. One is community engagement. I think that is so important, and Fareh mentioned that as well. There are so few graduates from architecture schools that are ethnically diverse. There are, it's half and half women and men. That's changed. When I graduated, I was the only woman in my graduating class, or one of maybe 2. But now it's kind of, that has changed, but now we have to get the ethnic diversity in there. And that education begins at the early levels, at preschool, kindergarten, middle school, high school, career fairs, those types of things. So we're working with our clients to try to get the word out about architecture. And then in terms of our recruiting, we're hoping within 5 years, our firm actually mirrors the United States population in terms of percentages of Latino and African American. If we can find them, we will bring them in. The problem is finding them, and I think it's because they're not there. So it's bringing that education at the high school, pre-college level, let's just say. We are targeting new universities for recruiting, more urban universities and also new universities. And at the end of the day, we're trying to maintain the culture, the family friendly, even at our larger size, still working on sophisticated projects with clients that are also sophisticated and open to inclusion. So that's what I have to say for today. Thank you for letting me share my experiences.
Thank you, Merilee. Thank you very much. Okay, now, Merilee, if you could stop sharing your screen and I will share my screen. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, so before I move further into the measuring progress presentation, I want to ask both of you ladies to please turn your microphone back on for a minute. And I'm going to ask, one of the questions that we're hearing a lot at AIA New Jersey is, how does improving firm equity help your bottom line? How does it help your firm as a business? What is the relationship between business success and equity success? And I'm sorry to catch you off guard with this question that I didn't prepare you for, but I'm sure both of you have some thoughts on that.
In my case, I think it's, I alluded to it when we were talking. I think that people from different viewpoints are bringing more creativity to our work. And our work, the value of our work is really the value of our business. If we can't provide innovation to our clients, then we're not, it's not worth being in business. So we have really benefited from engaging a broader audience and allowing more people to have a say in how our designs are put together, how our buildings are put together. So for us, it really comes down to the quality of the work and the creativity, and hearing from, we crowdsource a lot of information in the firm. and it's been really, I've learned a lot. So that's what I would say. That's how it brings value to our business.
Great. Thank you. And how about you, Fareh?
I do agree with much of what Merilee said. I definitely think that a diverse and equitable office and staff definitely lends itself to um, a more diverse creativity and ideas. And architecture in the built environment that addresses all people equally. I would also say, in regards to business success and equity success, if you are able to keep your staff, I guess very simply, right? If you're able to keep people on board and keep them happy and keep them balanced and keep them, and retain the talent that you have and you bring in, that isn't, I think that's a very easily recognizable benefit to your bottom line, right? Because you're spending time and effort educating an architect, along the many years, and so being able, so them leaving, for whatever reason, I would say is a loss. Retaining that staff, creating that sort of family environment that we have, and keeping your staff engaged, certainly I would say contributes heavily to your business success. And we do
Great.
that. Actually, I've noticed that, at Morristown, we celebrate, very often, longevity, and people have been there for 20, 30 years at a time. So, although we are bringing people in, and as Merilee said, one of their goals is to, increase their staff to 100 or so, we do bring in new people, but we also are aiming on the other end to retain and maintain talent through, various ways. And I think that is one of the successes that I've seen in the office, that that environment.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I will also make a few comments for our audience with regards to equity, increasing the business opportunity, relate to, it doesn't necessarily have to be about gender or sexuality or race, but having an atmosphere of equity in a firm where people feel like they're being treated fairly and the firm is being transparent and people understand how the culture operates and that there is not a some kind of secret society going on in the company. All of those things are related to equity. So even if the company were all the same demographic, there still could be feelings of inequity in a firm if members of the organization are feeling that some people are having some sort of advantage over another. So if we take it down to the most elementary level, let's say we're looking at a kindergarten class, and the teacher is rewarding different children in the class in a way that's confusing, that the children can't understand. Why is that person getting 2 cupcakes and I'm only getting 1 cupcake and somebody else is getting no cupcakes? If people aren't able to understand, the transparency isn't there of why people are being treated in a certain way, it's going to create a feeling of people being guarded or people being apprehensive to be as open-minded and fully engaged with each other. So regardless of what kinds of circumstances of equity we're looking at, so a firm might say, oh, we don't have an equity problem because everybody that works here is a white man. There still could be equity problems that you're not thinking about. You're isolating equity into a conversation about race or sexuality or gender when it's the conversation about equity really touches everything. So regardless of what the individual firm circumstances are, equity still allows everyone at the firm to feel like they're on a level playing field. And it doesn't mean that everyone will be treated the same, but people understand there is a transparent, logical system to why people are treated differently. So, you know, this is the hierarchy of the firm. These are the benchmarks that you have to achieve to work your way through the hierarchy. And the employees understand and feel that things are fair. So at the time that you're interviewing for the job, the firm can explain to you, this is the culture of our firm. These are the dynamics of how things operate here. And people feel that things are fair because they understand and it's a transparent situation at the firm. Obviously, being in a situation where the employees feel that they're being treated fairly and reasonably is going to create a situation where employees are going to be more positively responsive to the firm, more energized and enthusiastic about serving the firm. And for example, as Merilee had mentioned, if you were in an atmosphere where you're not afraid to tell your firm, oh, I'm having a situation with my child or with my dog or with my parent or with my refrigerator or with my car, you know that the firm has your best interest in mind. And the firm knows that on the flip side, when the firm comes to you and says, oh, we're having a problem with the deadline or a building official or, you know, whatever the case is, you're going to rise to the occasion for them and they are rising to the occasion for you. And that symbiotic relationship is what equity is all about. So it doesn't mean that somebody's getting preferential treatment because they're in a more dominant situation or a less dominant situation, but that everybody understands why the company is taking the actions that they're taking to treat people fairly. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about measuring progress. So in the previous seminars that we held on this topic, we covered things like office culture and being comfortable with different international traditions and what people might be bringing to the firm. We talked about retention, mentorship and sponsorship, and career advancement. So all of those are different ways that the company might set goals for measuring. And to understand what the advantages are or what progress you've been making in putting together those elements, it's important to be able to measure the progress that the firm is making in those areas. Let's see, I am screen sharing. Why aren't we advancing? There we go. Okay, so steps to measuring progress. One would be gathering data about the elements that the firm is taking action on, identifying the areas of focus that are becoming evident in the data that's been collected, setting goals for reaching equity, and those are going to be different for each firm. Each firm will have a different starting point and a different ending point. So the goals that they set will be unique to each firm. Analyzing the data that was collected against the goals, designing strategies to help correct some areas where you may not be reaching the goals that you were hoping, or perhaps veering off in another direction, and measuring the change. So again, measuring change can be as obvious as counting how many women or how many African Americans or how many parents or you know, whatever the demographic is that you're measuring, counting how many of those people that you have at the firm or counting how many clients that suit that demographic are a part of the practice. But it also can be something that's much harder to measure, taking a look at what the emotional or psychological situation is in the firm. So when you have people that that feel that things aren't transparent, then you're going to have defenses up and people equally being reserved when they are exchanging with the people that they feel that something, you know, that secret society theory that I mentioned before. If people feel like that's going on, then they're going to be guarded and not being open to being equitable in return. So when we take a look at the progress, the metrics help to inform if we are making progress that we're hoping for. And the metrics can be something that are tracked on a regular basis. There should be consistency in the way that we're measuring progress, and also transparency. So while maybe the assignment of firm equity is given to a staff person, it should definitely not be something that isn't embraced all the way up and down the ladder. So the whole ladder has to have respect for the process, respect for the goals, and the whole firm should be discussing the goals that are in place. So everyone realizes that, you know, there's not one bad boy that's being addressed as not being a part of the process, but that everybody, the whole organization, is being measured in their equitable progress, and that everyone is accountable for their actions and behaviors and the steps that they play, or the steps that they take to play their role in improving firm equity. Fareh and Merilee, if you want to add anything at any point with regards to what I'm talking about, feel free to just pop into the conversation. Okay, so this is a really busy slide. I'm not going to read all this to you, but it talks about different things that firms might consider measuring. So for example, having the leaders be fully integrated into the equitable practice of the firm. So the leaders have to be in agreement to making a commitment to what the firm is working on as their goals, and allowing whoever it is that has been put in charge of the equitable advancement and tracking equity to give them full authority to be able to take action and have conversation with everyone at the firm on those topics. Improving the climate and culture. So if the collected data points a finger to a problem in office culture, then the firm has to be able to take a look at what changes do we need to make to adjust those measurements in the office climate. Increased evidence that employees feel that the workplace is equitable. That goes to some of the comments that I made just immediately earlier on, you know, are people feeling like they can confidently go in and talk about what issues are in front of them, and how is the firm going to address those things? And all of these things will affect the employee retention, as Fareh had mentioned. It's certainly a bad practice to constantly be having a lot of office turnover. And if people are feeling uncomfortable in the office related to the culture, related to transparency, related to leadership buy-in, any one of those things is going to affect the office retention. Occasionally we will lose employees, but what are their responses in the exit interviews? So are they leaving because of, you know, they just have a career goal that takes them in another direction? Or are they leaving because they felt uncomfortable in the work environment that was being provided at your organization? Are we seeing in-office aggression? So are there areas where there's hostility between employees related to any of our equity topics? And how can those things be counteracted? So the whole firm, it's when you're in a situation that the employee feels uncomfortable bringing a circumstance where they have felt an aggression or a bias towards them, and they feel that they can't express that to the firm, then that is clear evidence that the leadership has not bought into the whole process of improving equity in the firm. So once the firm makes the commitment to this move of equity, it's not merely just, oh, well, you know, this is a new procedure that we're going to put in place, but there has to be full buy-in up and down the ladder. There's also financial commitments that the firm can make to different practices, similar to what both Merilee and Fareh had mentioned. So are there activities that the firm is going to engage in possibly during work hours, like providing mentorship experiences or going into schools in a K-12 environment and promoting architecture? A lot of those things relate back to things that AIA New Jersey offers as a professional organization. And we have all kinds of tools available to our member firms to help you integrate those practices into your firm, whether it's through ACE mentorship or it's through the AIA New Jersey K-12 program, working together with New Jersey Steam Tank, which is run by the New Jersey School Board Association and encourages children in all levels of elementary, middle, and high school to engage in creative problem solving techniques. And all of those little steps plant the seeds towards having the next generation of architects. So particularly here in New Jersey, and I will tell you AIA New Jersey also as an organization, so if we're comparing your firm's practice to AIA New Jersey's practice, it's easy to say, we'd really like to have a lot more Black people work at our firm, or we'd really like to have a lot more women leaders in AIA, or we'd really like to have whatever greater level of equity you are seeking, but sometimes you're seeking something that there are no candidates to fill those roles. So for example, looking to historical Black colleges, or going into communities that will tap into the demographic that you're looking for. So sometimes we have a really robust population of women leaders in the Women in Architecture Committee, but they're not penetrating into the greater leadership. Or we have, there are lots of women in construction organizations, women in the built environment organizations, and we have phenomenal leadership in those organizations, but again, not necessarily always infiltrating out into the greater community. So why is that happening? Obviously, they're strong leaders. Why are they not moving out into the community? So you can say, well, let's take a look at what we're currently doing. Obviously, we have some barrier to equity in our organization. So those people aren't feeling welcome for whatever reason. I'm sure everybody knows about firms who seem to be all African-American staff or all women staff, and those firms are doing something to make those people feel that they are welcome and included. And there's something about the other environments that they're having difficulty infiltrating. So while some people might say, well, it's, we don't want to single anybody out, and we don't want it to appear that it's just a token nod towards, checking off a box of how many people we have from this other demographic. But instead taking a look at what cultural issues might be a barrier to those people feel that they need, that they're not feeling comfortable in the organization. Measuring is important because it helps to lead change. And once we have change in place, it's hard to even imagine what it was like before. So when we take a look at these scales of measurement, it's very often hard just to get through that initial battle, because when we start to have the equity conversation, people feel defensive. Oh, are you saying that I am the one causing the equity problem? Am I treating people unfairly? Am I the one who's blocking people? And it may be completely unconscious. There may be actions or words or attitudes that are making people feel uncomfortable or creating that level of imbalance without being intentional. And sometimes it's even, I remember back to when I was a little girl, some practices or words that people would use, they weren't necessarily inappropriate words, but they were still words that made me feel uncomfortable as a girl. Instead of making me feel part of the group, they made me feel different from the group. And yes, I want to be special and I want to be recognized for the things that make me unique, as you should recognize every individual in your organization for the unique qualities that they bring to the firm. But it shouldn't be unique in such a way that people feel odd. It should be unique in such a way that people feel that's the special thing that they bring to the organization. And every one of the members of your organization is going to have something special. And that's another reason why it's important for people at every level of the ladder to also celebrate what the other people are bringing to the table. So giving everyone at the organization an opportunity to showcase a project that they're working on, or be a guest lecturer at a lunch and learn, or be invited to speak to a client or make a client presentation, where in other scenarios, it may be hard and fast, stick to the hierarchy. sometimes it's okay to break that hierarchy because you are celebrating the talents and the unique skills that different people are bringing to the equation. So you may have a very, very low level person who's a great presenter or is great at, community service projects or working with children or whatever it is that the goals of the firms are. So instead of just having your token photograph with a bunch of kids, really think about the quality of what that engagement is going to be, what benefit it's going to bring to the firm. And then when you go back to measure those things, you're going to have a more obvious change. The people that you're working with can feel if it is a token expression of checking off a box towards equity, or if it's something that you're actually doing to try to move that needle. Okay, so I'm going to leave up this slide while I talk about some other metrics that we have from AIA National and some of the strategies that your firm can put in place for measuring. So we have, once we start to take a look at the employee engagement and psychological safety, those are elements that will help to raise the transparency and improve accountability in the workplace and support retention for the profession. So those are obvious steps that a firm can take that is going to move that needle, improve the bottom line of the firm while improving the equity situation at the organization. These improvements are also likely to have an impact on the firm reputation, productivity, growth, and profit, and ultimately help the profession and the wider community. So these are steps that might feel like they are going to be a disruption to the way the firm is already acting. So if the firm already isn't one taking a look at their equity movement, taking some steps in this direction might feel like an obtrusion, but in reality, it's going to change the psychological safety of everybody at the firm because they understand that the firm is acknowledging and taking a look at their equity practices. And there are so many different elements of equity that can be investigated that nearly every single firm can have opportunities for improvement. The metrics are most effective when they have the full commitment of the workplace leaders. So that transparency and keeping things updated and refined over time. So we have office meetings that discuss the transparency. In a larger organization, it may be an equity report that goes out on a regular basis. So employees can see, here are the strategies that the firm put in place. Here are the actions that we took to try to reach those goals. We measured the data against what we were hoping to reach with those goals. And these are the adjustments that the firm is making to improve our success rate next time to continue to reach those goals or to set new goals for yourself. Especially for a firm who hasn't taken any action towards a greater equitable experience, you may want to set small goals so everybody feels that it's manageable and it's something that can be easily integrated into the firm culture. Quantitative and qualitative data both have benefits which are complementary to each other. Quantitative measures, when standardized and tracked consistently over time, can indicate progress and allow comparison with benchmarks and profession-wide data. Qualitative data, with richer responses about perceptions and stories of experiences, provide context for the quantitative data and contribute hypotheses and ideas for action. So it is important to measure those two things in sync with each other. And it can be a little bit harder to be able to pull out the qualitative data if people don't feel that the firm is genuinely committed to making a equity change. So that's why it's important to demonstrate that the full leadership is behind this. The staff who are working on the equity measures are doing this for the benefit of every individual at the firm. And to try to identify areas where you're having barriers to progress and resolve those barriers while ensuring that everybody feels that they are a part of the solution and that they understand why the firm is taking these steps and how they are measuring the progress. When identifying areas to improve, determining what strategies to employ, and assessing whether these strategies are effective, it's important to recognize the difference between causation and correlation. Causation indicates that one change directly and conclusively causes something else to occur. Correlation indicates that there's a relationship between two variables, but does not suggest that one definitely causes the other. Causation is therefore more difficult to determine. So causation would occur when a particular strategy is put in place and is exercised in isolation, and then the firm can directly measure what change took place because of this. So for example, if an office is having an in-office culture problem, they may want to employ more office socialized activities. So maybe they have office lunches that they hold together, or office activities that go on the weekends or after work. And they don't always have to be social, because the problem with the social activity is every individual of the firm has different comfort levels with how they socialize. Some might like to go out for a drink. Some might like to do family activities. Some might like to do, go for a hike together, or go mountain biking together. So it's hard to plan a social activity that's going to appeal to everybody at the firm. So one of the easy ways to start to improve the culture and the interrelationships between your firm is to come up with some outside office activities that are related to what the firm's already doing. So it could be a field trip to a project that the company's working on. And it's not company time, it's not company practice, it's something that employees are being invited to do. But if you plan these activities during a time that the employee is already being paid for, it shows the employees that the office is devoted to improving the office culture without taking you away from your family, or without taking you away from the gym, or without taking you away from whatever you do in your personal time. So if the firm puts in place activities that are going to take you away from that, it can put further stress on you. So the firm believes that they're putting together an activity to improve office culture, but it's actually causing a stress on some employees because they aren't available at that outside time. And they feel uncomfortable saying to the firm, oh, I can't come to that activity, or I can't participate. So things that the office can do at lunch to help improve the personal relationships between the staff and to break down the barriers between each other. There certainly are going to be people at the office that are your friends, but everyone at the firm, whether they consider each other to be friends or not friends, should have a comfortable relationship and be able to talk to anybody else at the firm. And it's important for the firm leadership to take on the role of creating those environments. And once we have, seeing if that is successful by having greater people participate, more ease of conversation when those activities occur, and seeing how those activities change the experience of people who are working on teams in your design studios. So causation is something that we have, we're going to try this one strategy, and then we're going to see the effect of that strategy. Correlation is when we have a few different things going on at the firm, and you don't necessarily know exactly what action created that reaction, but you can see that when these variety of things happen in combination with one another, it created a benefit, or it created a challenge. So the firm can start to take a look at, here, what are we putting in place and what action is it taking? And it's important for the firm to be tracking those changes. What strategies did we put in place? What actual actions? Sometimes you put a strategy in place in policy, but people aren't really carrying out the strategy. So you're not actually seeing that change. So it's important for the firm to keep track of that. Existing assessment instruments can also help to collect that data. So of course we know the typical demographics that a firm collects. There are demographics that a firm is already measuring, and new demographics that they're going to be collecting. And they might need those things for a variety of reasons. Sometimes public work looks for different demographic information on your firm. There may be awards that your firm is going for that looks for certain elements of diversity or equity in your firm. There are certain opportunities that are looking for women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses. And there are opportunities for firms of any size to tap into the resources available for achieving these levels of equity and then being able to take the professional business benefits that come hand in hand with those opportunities. Let's see. When done in an interculturally competent manner, taking stock of where an organization stands initially with respect to equity, diversity, and inclusion, implementing strategies for improvement, and tracking progress over time can have a number of results. So the progress for an individual is related to improved workplace culture. So feeling better about where it is that you're working, enjoying the experience that you're having at work, feeling that you're being treated fairly, and having a positive dynamic with your coworkers. Career development. If an employee feels like there's a transparent ladder in the firm and they understand what steps they need to take to reach the next goal, and their firm is being supportive and having open lines of communication through their reviews and through their inter-office communications of what career development opportunities are there for that individual is going to feel a positive momentum and a positive relationship with that firm and their career development activities. Employment decision making. Individuals make employment decisions based on a number of different factors, based on money, based on time, based on freedom, based on their ability to affect change in their office, whether it's change related to a project or change related to office dynamics or change related to office practice. And also with their work-life balance. So when employees feel that there is decision-making that's going on, that they are engaged in the process, that they understand how the firm is making those choices and they feel a part of that process, or if they are not one of the decision makers, if they feel that their circumstances are being considered in those decision-making, that's going to be another positive reward for that individual. And then necessary conversation. So data is helpful as a catalyst for hard conversations. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable to say this is a personality issue, but if you're able to back it up with data, it can be a little bit easier to share that message. So sometimes you have a really great employee that is just not meshing from an equity standpoint. And hopefully there are tools, whether it's through communication or it's through office policies, that can be taken by the organization to smooth over those situations. If not, there can be a need to go through a termination process to keep the quality of the office culture high. So that's an important leadership role to be able to identify where those roadblocks are in the organization and take steps to be able to improve those for the overall culture of the firm. From a manager's perspective, the reduction of bias. So particularly in an office where people have been working together for a long time, sometimes it can be, people aren't necessarily aware that that bias is in place. And the bias could be something as easy as, well, this is the guy that I bike ride with every day at lunch, so it's easier for me to work with him because we have a rapport outside of what we're doing here at work. And that's an example why it's good to be able to build up that rapport, because people have many, many different areas of their lives where they can have connection points that may or may not relate to what they're doing at work, but create a feeling of connectivity between people. So a manager can have an unconscious bias that they don't even realize is happening, that could be very innocently rooted, but it's having a major impact on the relationships between the firm. So being able to, for the leadership to be able to discuss with managers those circumstances of bias that are evident, and for those managers to be able to discuss with the people underneath them what evidence of bias is occurring within the workforce, both of those things have to occur for that successful exchange of psychological safety in the firm. Clarity. Results can provide clarity to a supervisee about where to focus attention for the greatest positive effect. So it's very important for the office not only to define what we're doing, but what are we going to do about areas where we're not making success? So what are actions that each of the employees can take to help to reach those greater goals? So that, once we reach the level of data and we see where things are tracking, it's important to go back through that investigation of causation and see, okay, what actions did we take that resulted in us missing our goal? And how can we make adjustments to those initial actions to fix that? So if employees feel that a new plan is being put in place, so it's not just, hey, we failed, but let's take a look at, what did we get wrong in those areas? What did we do wrong? Or maybe the strategy put in place was never a good strategy to begin with. So sometimes it's not necessarily that it was a great strategy that we failed on. Sometimes the strategy wasn't the right one to reach the result that we were hoping for. And then assessment. Of course, a manager has the opportunity to go through an assessment, and it's important to assess each employee's circumstances through giving them privacy to be able to discuss their experience at work with their manager, and then being able to take that information, whether it's openly or confidentially, up the chain to say, here are some areas that we're aware of through our recent assessment that still need to be addressed, and how are we going to go through addressing that. And keeping things confidential sometimes doesn't necessarily mean that we're taking away office transparency, but it could be putting in protective layers of communication so people feel that they can confidently come forward to discuss whatever it is that they're going through with the organization. Because we all know that if people stay quiet about those things, eventually they build up and the person leaves. And that's a disadvantage to the firm and a disadvantage to the employee. So keeping that open line of communication, and for the staff to know that they can confidently go to their manager and talk about these things, that opens up the door for successful retention at the firm. And what are the benefits for the firm? So number one, for the firm to have an awareness. Measuring EDI indicators help the firm to understand that, particularly at a very large firm, it's sometimes people think things are working and it might look good on paper, but maybe the office culture isn't really feeling that. So we may have a lot of practices in place that we can document and say, oh, these are some activities that we took part in. These are some areas that we reached out to improve equity. But how did equity actually change as a result of that? So for example, if a firm is going to make a commitment to do K-12 work, do they go out for a one-day career day lecture and take a lot of pictures and put it in their newsletter and then forget about it? Or do they go out and make a connection to those students, find students who are interested in pursuing architecture or who have an interest in the built environment, and start to adopt those children as part of the firm community service work, and lead those children up through the high school process, help them understand what's available to them on a college level, and then continue to mentor them. So Fareh, for example, had mentioned sometimes even if we get people of a smaller demographic all the way up through the pipeline, it can still be hard to retain them over the long term. So identify why does that happen, and what steps need to be taken to be able to improve that situation. Also for firm benefits, being able to identify the problem. So having those metrics helps us to be able to isolate where the problem areas are so we can make improvements in those areas. Making a commitment to the equity metrics allows us to track over time. You know, this wasn't just an isolated thing that we did in 2020 because we happen to be talking about Black Lives Matter and the firm decided to jump on this trend. But what is our long-term plan, and how are we looking at our metrics over time to see that we are consistently making improvements? And how does our firm improve over the long term? So Merilee, for example, who was able to give evidence over a very long period of time of change that her firm has taken. So that's a really great opportunity for a firm to be able to say, here's where we were, here's where we are now, and these are the different things that we put in place that were successful to make that change. The reputation of a firm. So for example, I contacted Gensler and KSS in particular, because those firms have a reputation of being great firms for equity. So it wasn't just random that we have our co-speakers on here, but their reputations precede them for being firms that care about equity and actually put practice in place to move that needle. And that's why we invited them to be here today. And those are long-term benefits for a firm, not just in the community, you know, even communities that that struggle to put equity in place on their own. Any organization can see that by being more transparent and connecting those dots and giving your employees an opportunity to feel a greater part of the organization and understand the transparency of moving through the organization is going to create a much greater positive reputation for the organization. And the profession on a whole. So the architecture profession has gone through, you know, for all the years that I have been an architect, since the time I was in school, it's been considered an old white man's profession, and still I stepped into it regardless. So there are attitudes that are historical, and sometimes those stereotypes are rooted in biases that persist. And so we have to take a look at why does that stereotype exist, and what changes can take place to be able to change what the future of architecture looks like. And we're at a crossing point right now in the national conversation with our members. You know, what did the profession look like yesterday, and what do we want the profession to look like tomorrow? And how do the two work together? It doesn't mean that you're throwing one out to adopt the new, but you're going to absorb all the best parts of the past of the profession and work out the kinks of the current part of the profession, and hopefully redeem the opportunities in the future of the profession by going through these steps. So when you want change to take place, oftentimes it requires going through things that are uncomfortable. So change requires identifying what the problem areas are, and every problem area is going to have associated with it somebody who thought that was a good idea, or somebody who continues to perpetuate that behavior. So taking a step towards change is going to require shining a light on the problems that have existed in the past. And that creates defensiveness, and it creates you know, some discomfort, but that's okay, because we're all going to take a step forward together, and we're going to explain why we're taking this step forward and how everybody is collectively going to benefit by the future of the profession. So working together as a group, explaining why we're taking these steps and being able to move forward is a positive experience for everybody. I want to mention also some of the actions that AIA New Jersey has taken on this front, and how we're seeing those changes take place. So for example, in the 90s, when I first joined AIA New Jersey, we had a lot of K-12 educational work that we did. And it was very often, we would send our architects out into their own child's school district to talk to their own child's class. And while we still encourage that, we have moved the needle from saying, okay, well, I'm going to talk to my own kid's class. Now, first of all, your own child knows you're an architect and probably has some experience to what an architect is, because you're living right there in the house with them, and you probably bring home blueprints and things once in a while. So that child probably doesn't need to hear what an architect is as much as a child in a community that maybe very few people own their own home, or very few people live in single family houses and have the experience of understanding the impact that each individual has on their built environment, and the impact that the quality of their built environment has back on them. So now our K-12 programming reaches out to a much more diverse population. So for example, this year we did a design competition in February that was a tower challenge exclusively for high school girls. So we had over 100 girls who participated in the design challenge. And that was a first for us of having a competition that was strictly for girl designers. When we do our previous design challenges, although everyone was invited to attend, we did tend to have mostly boys participate in those design challenges. And they also were successful, and an outstanding opportunity for those boys to have that experience. But we felt that it would be advantageous to have an all-girls event for girls who have felt marginalized and maybe uncomfortable in raising their hand and stepping forward to participate in a STEM activity like an architectural tower challenge. We also do a lot more outreach now to underprivileged communities who may not have ever seen an architect or spoken with an architect or understand what an architect is or does. So we're obviously going to have less people come from the minority population if they feel uncomfortable integrating into the larger population, or they don't even know anything about the larger population. So our K-12 programming now from AIA New Jersey makes a point to reach out to populations who are currently underrepresented in our profession, to spread the word about architecture and architects and architectural education. As an organization, from a perspective of improving our diversity in our leadership, we've gone through a few steps to start that ball rolling. So a couple of years ago, we began celebrating our women in architecture population, our African-American architect population, our Hispanic architect population, our Asian architect population in different promotional periods during the year. So we would invite all of our members who identify with a particular group to participate. It gave them an opportunity to present themselves, to present their firm, to present their work, to speak about their attitudes towards their personal profession, experience, and the organization. And once we were able to do that, it then started to introduce us to who more of our members are who may not have had the opportunity to have their voice heard or speak. So through going through that process, we now have more of those people who are leaders in their local sections or have joined the committees on a statewide basis, or more people that we can call upon to participate in activities like this. Merilee and I first met when she participated in the Women in Architecture promotion that we did a couple of years ago. And that was how I first was introduced to Merilee. So by participating in things like that, it allows you to start to have an understanding and a greater transparency with our members, understand what their goals are, and find opportunities for them to engage with the organization. So there are opportunities within AIA New Jersey that we weren't tapping into because we didn't know all the resources that we had available to us through our population. And we're starting to learn about that through our engagement in these different sectors that we've been promoting in the last couple of years. Some of the larger firms have a very, very strong culture within their own firm, and so become less engaged with an organization like AIA New Jersey. But we want all of our firms to know that the opportunities are available for everyone to be a part of what we're talking about in tonight's conversation, as well as our other conversations. We have so many more committees now that are becoming active. It's so interesting how COVID, the fact that people have stopped running around as much as they were, and feeling joining a committee or being a part of a movement required a lot of driving or time away from the house or time away from their family. People now are much more able to be involved. Merilee and I were even just talking about that last week of different opportunities on a regional level, on a state level, on a national level that may previously have required 3 or 4 days travel, or taking a lot of time off of work to be able to be fully engaged in the way operations were previously held. We now see that a lot more can be done from your office or from your home, participating online, and we've had a much greater participation in all of these activities, which is terrific. And I think a lot of firms are seeing a similar benefit. There are people who are really embracing the fact that the work from home requirement has now opened up a lot of firms to different degrees of acceptable practice, different levels of flexibility, and different opportunities that we never would have thought about the world adopting even just 8 months ago. So now we're seeing things that maybe employees were hoping to encourage in a firm, but the firm was unable to take the step or unwilling to take the step, now are part of normal practice for that firm. And how are those going to make changes long term for employees who are maybe finishing up their degree or studying for the exam or balancing a family and work, or otherwise figuring out different dynamics of, New Jersey is an incredibly congested state. So transportation can be a huge barrier to people if it's not something that's directly having a positive effect on them. They may be unwilling to volunteer for something that's going to create a lot of barrier for people. So one of the big silver linings of COVID is seeing the opportunities that have availed themselves by people participating virtually. I am done with the content that I wanted to provide. I will invite my co-presenters to make any remarks on anything that I've covered or anything else that you've thought of, or any closing remarks, and then we will open up our Q&A from our participants.
I wanted to comment on New Jersey itself. I think New Jersey is actually a very diverse state, and probably more so than a lot of the states in the U.S. So I think that we can lead the way in terms of this initiative. I mean, a lot of this initiative is coming out of AIA National, but I think that New Jersey is really on the front lines. Probably New York as well, and maybe California. So I think we have a great opportunity here.
Thank you, Merilee. Fareh?
Hi. Yeah, I agree. I do see a lot of what you've just described. I've experienced and I've seen play out over years at Gensler, and it's actually quite refreshing to hear you kind of describe them, in such a structured way. It doesn't come across, I guess, as that when I experience it in my day-to-day, but I think that what you're describing is ultimately going to really transform and hopefully have a very positive effect on architecture and architecture firms in the future. Yeah, I agree that New Jersey is very diverse. You have quite a few architecture programs that are producing quite a diverse range of students coming out of it. And so there's many opportunities to do and implement a lot of the things that you're describing. It's up to us, right? It's up to the architectural profession and community in the state to continue to exhibit and participate and proliferate all of what you have described here. It's a lot of information. I kind of want to go back and re-listen to this and kind of read through the guide. But yes, it's been very helpful to listen to, and there's a lot here that I will certainly take back and share with Gensler Morristown, and hopefully have some feedback to you on how we're doing.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
We have 3 questions from our audience. The first question comes from Michelle Campbell. She is asking, how about a program to help Black women pass the ARE so that they can become an official AIA member? AIA New Jersey has a variety of ARE support tools. I don't know of any that are particularly targeting Black women, but I know that we have free ARE study resources. So books and flashcards and electronic study guides that were purchased by AIA New Jersey or the local sections that are available as free resources to any one of our members to support them. So you mentioned an official AIA member. We have official AIA members. I guess you mean a licensed member, but people can join AIA even before they're licensed. We have, I joined right out of college, and I was a member while I was an associate, and took advantage of those support tools that were available to me. So AIA New Jersey will help you to find support groups. So sometimes we have webinars that are taught by instructors for preparing for the ARE. Sometimes they are support groups where everybody in the group is preparing for the ARE. And we also have a great opportunity to connect you with mentors to have a support system in place. So for example, if you are an associate member preparing to take the ARE, we wouldn't assign you a mentor that took the licensing exam 40 years ago. We would assign you a mentor who is in the process of taking the exam or has recently passed the exam and can connect with what your particular experience is right now. And Michelle, I don't know if you're currently a member or not. I am assuming you're an associate member if you are not licensed yet, but you can reach out to me personally and I will help to connect you with the right people to get you the resources you need to assist you and support you through passing the exam. The next question is from Lori Ann Jones, who is the president of AIA Central New Jersey. She mentions there is a lot to consider in terms of equity. What would you recommend as a starting approach for firms who want to grab hold of these guidelines? So, for example, certainly I would, I know when we do these presentations, there's a lot of talking and there's a lot of words on the screen. So it can seem kind of overwhelming to get started. But I have also offered to come into a firm and take a look at what your current situation is and what your goals are. And I can help you break things down into smaller pieces so your firm can start to understand small steps that you can take. The equity guides are available online. The link for the guides is right up here on the slide that we're looking at right now, which will give you all 9 guides. And they do break them down into segments that I think firms can pretty quickly, like today we kind of did a summary because we were talking about, the data collected from everything that we've done. But I think when a firm takes a look at the 9 guides, they can say right away, oh, we obviously have a retention problem, or we obviously have a career advancement problem, or we have an office culture problem. So very quickly, a firm can probably identify where those areas of deficiency are. And if you already have, if you can collect survey information from your staff, either anonymously or if the firm culture is such that the office feels comfortable communicating these things, your office can very quickly tell you where those areas of resistance are. So you can identify where that psychological safety is not currently existing and how to create bridges to buffer those areas to make those improvements. But I personally, as the chairperson of the equity committee, I will volunteer to participate with any firm who is interested in taking a look at what your circumstances are against the equity guides and try to figure out where your goals need to be and what steps you might need to take. So tonight, one of our slides covered 15 areas that you might be measuring. We can take a look at which of those areas are issues for your firm and then put some strategies in place to try to move that needle for the firm individually. Next question is also from Lori Ann Jones. There is often resistance to change. Is there a good way to help firm leaders recognize the need to adopt more equitable practices in the firm? So let's see. When the problem is the firm leadership, and I'm even hearing from firm leaders right now about some of the steps that we're taking towards equity, people aren't necessarily seeing the correlation between equity and the benefits to the business. So they're saying, why are we spending so much time talking about this and thinking about this? I don't understand. My firm's working fine now. Why would we suddenly overlay this question on top of it? And chances are there are areas where equity can be improved, but people haven't necessarily felt confident asking that question. So when there are issues where the leadership is the problem, if there are enough people at the firm who have a voice collectively. So I would say if the leadership is the problem and you don't want to leave the firm, then probably what you should do is reach out for equity camaraderie among the rest of the staff. So if other people on the staff are feeling a similar experience to what you're feeling, and enough people feel that way, then maybe the staff can propose to the leadership, hey, we would like to institute this program at the firm. So if the firm leaders don't understand that there is a problem, or you have already approached them, and I mean, if you've already approached them and they don't acknowledge the problem and they don't care about it, then there may be nothing you can do other than leave that firm. But if perhaps there is ignorance to the problem, but there may be open-mindedness to addressing it, then I think it behooves the employees to band together and start to put in place a program that could be enacted for the benefit of all of those employees. And again, that's something that I would be happy to volunteer to help a firm to have that conversation. So I have employees all the time that come to me with all kinds of, issues that they're feeling as an employee and how to have that conversation. And we do some role playing to kind of talk through the process, or I can help them with some talking points, or we can actually pull up data. Because again, sometimes if you're talking emotionally, that can leave the speaker very exposed and can leave the adversary feeling attacked and can create an emotional breakdown in being able to resolve that situation. But if we're able to present data and metrics to the benefits of taking these steps, sometimes it can take the personalities out of the equation and people feel less defensive about it. So it's not necessarily that you're creating the problem, but this is a problem that we're seeing among the profession, and we would like to take steps to ensure that our firm isn't a part of that problem. So can we collectively work on this solution? And that's something that you can say to a firm leader, rather than saying, hey, I'm feeling like I'm a victim under this situation. You can say, here's an initiative that AIA New Jersey and AIA National are adopting. And I think it would be in our great professional interest to be a part of the solution by taking a look at these opportunities. Anything else?
Stacey,
Yeah.
Can I comment on
Yes.
On Lori Ann's questions? I think that the first question, actually Fareh's presentation was really simply talked about ways you can address these issues. And she kind of wrote that there was the diagram that had the half wheel, and it had like 5 different topics. And they were education, recruiting, design, the impact of your designs, and then your clients. And I think that was really a beautiful and simple way to really boil a lot of this down. And actually recruiting is also recruiting and development, pulling people through the ranks and allowing them to grow. I thought that diagram was actually really beautiful. And I did a screenshot of it because it was so simple, and it's what we've been talking about in our office. And it's gotten so complex, and that diagram just kind of boiled it down to the simple things that we can do as professionals to support this endeavor. The other question about the resistance to change and the leadership, I think if those leaders understood how strong your community can be within the firm, and also how that community can put together better work if the community is very strong and also diverse. That's what we're finding, that our work is getting better as we become more diverse. And also we're getting better clients, more open-minded clients, and the work that we're doing is more visionary and mission-based. And so I think if the leaders understood the value of doing this, they may be more willing to try. And even some of our clients are having to do this. We work for a lot of cultural institutions, and they're finding that their client base is wealthy white individuals, and that when those individuals end up passing, they don't have any client base. In other words, they don't have members of their museums or their theaters. And so they're having to appeal to a more diverse audience, and they're trying to reposition themselves as well. So it's not just architecture firms. And if leaders are not open to this, they're going to sort of wither and die, I would say. And so what I would say is that you are in a sort of a social contract with your firm. And if you don't have an alignment of your value system, then maybe that firm isn't the right firm for you if you can't make change there. So I think similar to what Stacey was saying, you know, it's really aligning the values of the leaders and the members of the firm.
We have a question asking us to define crowdsource.
I did that actually by text, or I actually, so I wrote, the way we crowdsource information in our firm is gathering information from the entire firm. And we do this via surveys, via charrettes, design charrettes, requests for content. Like we created a video and we actually asked everyone to send in like 30-second clips or designs or photos from, you know, different things that they've seen in their worlds. And then competitions as well. So the surveys, we survey how people like programming in the office, what days of the week are better for them for certain meetings, COVID information, are people interested in coming back to the firm? Are they too scared to come back? You know, and we really get an understanding of the undercurrent of the firm by doing, and a lot of times the surveys are anonymous. So we really do find out what's going on in the firm.
Great. That's all the questions that I have. I want to thank both of my speakers for participating tonight. For those of you who don't know, they only just recently were invited to participate because we have so much going on right now in our equity conversation. We just finished up our African-American panel, which has been so very, very popular. And we will be posting that online for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to participate in any of those webinars. But I want to thank my co-speakers tonight for being such eloquent speakers, sharing such excellent value to tonight's program, and encourage all of the attendees on our meeting tonight to continue the conversation. So I hope you'll take what you learned today back to your firms and to your committees and to your communities. Do please raise your hand to our committee to ask any further questions that you might have in the future. We are always open to new webinars if we have additional topics to be covered. And tonight's recording will be posted on the AIA New Jersey YouTube channel. We just recently changed our the way we have that set up, so we'll be posting that probably next week. And you have the opportunity to share it further or listen to it again if there's content that you may have missed during our presentation. So thanks everyone for participating. We don't have further questions, so I think we are going to sign off. And thank you for the great discussion. I wish I had access to these guides at my old firm. Thank you and thank you. So a lot of appreciation from our participants tonight. And I thank all of you for being a vibrant part of the equity webinar community for the last year and a half. And I look forward to bringing you more programming. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.